Hi, I'm Father Michael Orsi. I'm your host for Action for Life Television, that good news program which brings you the big G for the gospel of Jesus Christ and the little g, all the good things that people do to put that gospel of life into action. Well, folks, this is like a different kind of a program. Every week we have something for you to think about and something for you to pray about, and sometimes something for you to be horrified about, but there's always light at the end of the tunnel. Now, in the past, last couple of years, we did a few shows on human trafficking. And I told you at that time, this is modern sex slavery.
My birthday's tomorrow. Mama used to make me a chocolate cake. I like that. That was before Mama got sick. Before that man started coming over. First it was one time. And 2 times. I don't even know how many times now. I've given up on trying to stop it. It's probably my fault anyway. I think my teacher knew. She saw the bruises. She saw that I'd been hurt. She tried to give me a hug. I don't like being touched. I don't cry about it anymore. There's nothing I can do about it. Boys don't cry. Does anyone care? Why did Mama let him bring me to his friends? Why did Mama not say anything? Why can't people understand that I never wanted this? Why do they like to hurt me sometimes? Why don't they stop?
Now, today, this program, as I said, is going to be revolting. In some ways, it's absolutely revolting. But at least there is hope because we have an organization called the U.S. Institute Against Human Trafficking's Boys Safe Home. And we have the director with us today, Mr. John Long. And John, welcome, I think. I'm glad to have you on, but I don't like to talk about what you're going to talk about. So try to help us to tell us about your organization and then tell us, what's going on, how you got into this work. Please.
Yeah, I appreciate your comments, and you're right. Oftentimes when we talk about trafficking, we're using that female pronoun. We have this grandiose picture of a kind of a Hollywood production where somebody's abducted and they're taken, and it's typically a woman. But we oftentimes we don't talk about the boy, or we forget to talk about the boy. And that's why the U.S. Institute Against Human Trafficking exists, because our founder, Kevin Malone, through his travels around the world, he would see these little boys being sold on the streets. And when he came back to the United States, he started to question, is this an issue that we have domestically? And so started doing a lot of research and figuring out how many boy victims there are, what services are available. And through that, through the research, it's been estimated somewhere between 100,000 and 300,000 kids are being sold just in the United States on an annual basis.
Boys and girls, or just boys?
That's boys and girls, and it's been estimated about 36% of those are boys. So
36% are boys?
Are boys, minor boys. So we're talking about children under the age of 18 who are U.S. citizens being sold to U.S. citizens. So this is not an international issue. This is a domestic issue. And so our organization was created to try to provide a refuge for these victims. So we operate a safe house dedicated to boys between the age of 10 and 17 years old. So we've served boys as young as 10 years old, and we serve them up to their 18th birthday.
Oh, my. Could you tell me how many of these safe houses are there in our country?
That's the scary part. We have the only one in the United States.
And you're in Florida.
Here in Florida, in a Central Florida location, we have a 5-bed safe house for boys. So go back to that number, 36,000 kids, boys in the United States. There's only 5 beds in the United States dedicated to serving these kids.
First of all, we'll get to the other unfortunate boys. We'll talk about that and what happens with them. But how do they find out about you? Who brings them to you?
So, we receive kids from Homeland Security, law enforcement, Department of Children and Families. So we get referrals from a plethora of different organizations. And again, because we are the only house in the United States, we get referrals for kids from Hawaii, Oklahoma, Washington, D.C. So we've gotten referrals from across the country to have boys sent to our safe house.
But you only have 5 beds.
Yeah.
How does this work out? I mean, you have these thousands of boys abused, used, and then there's only 5 beds in the whole country.
Yeah, and that's why we do things like this. We got to raise awareness. A lot of people still can't really comprehend the boy being a victim. Sex is often celebrated in the male community. Boys will be boys. This is just something boys do. And so we really got to raise awareness that boys are victims too, that these boys aren't doing this because they want to. They're being forced into this life. And so we need to raise awareness. And again, and also not just raise awareness, but also start raising awareness of the need for services. We've got to have more beds out there. We've got to have people that are on the ground helping these boys because they're underserved.
Okay. Yeah. Do the boys get involved with this sex trafficking the same way that girls get drawn into the sex trafficking?
So it is similar. It kind of that Romeo and Juliet, sometimes pimp style, where a man will woo a woman who will come in and identify some of her needs and some of her weaknesses, and then he's kind of there and gives her time, gives her love, what she thinks is love, meets the need, and then at some point he'll switch and say, "Okay, I've done all of this for you. Now here's what you're going to do for me." And I don't want to overgeneralize every woman's story. That's not every woman's story, but that's kind of what we see commonly when women are being trafficked. When boys are being trafficked, oftentimes they're being trafficked through social media. They'll put their story out there. They tell you what school they go to, what church they go to, if they like their parents. And so they're putting themselves on social media, and men are grooming them through social media, through online gaming. And that's how they're being groomed. And then they're saying it's kind of the similar thing. Okay, if you lived with us, this is a story we just recently heard of a 16-year-old boy who was being groomed while he was online gaming. And they slowly built a relationship with him. And they said, if you lived with us, you wouldn't have to go to school. I know that you don't like your mother. If you live with us, we'll take care of you. We'll give you a dog. And so the kid said, sign me up. I want to go. So this 16-year-old child then started to live with them. And they started to sell this 16-year-old boy 10 to 15 times every day. This single boy was being sold.
10 to 15 times.
Yeah. Yeah, 10 to 15 times. And this is a story out of St. Pete. This is a local story of a kid who, for a year, was being sold like that. And the neighbors had no idea what was going on.
Wait,
Nobody asked any questions.
I'm getting sick here. Wait a minute, stop. What happens to the boy's body 10 or 15 times a day? Medically, this is inconceivable.
It's horrific. And as a 16-year-old boy, you're still developing, you're still trying to figure things out. This kid was living in a torture. He at one point while he was being trafficked, he texted one of the traffickers and said, I just can't do this anymore. I'm tired. I can't do this anymore. And their response was, that's no way to treat us. We've given you a place to live. We gave you a dog. You're going to continue to do these things or us. And the kid was just forced to stay in this life. Luckily, he was rescued. He came to our safe house. We spent a lot of time with him, and he, slowly recovered. He is now in college, on his way to be a medical professional. But that's a kid that was, being sold and needed a place like our safe house where it was a refuge, a place of healing for him.
All right. I just have to remind the folks out there about the dangers of the internet. Look, folks, I know you're very smart. We've been together for a long time now. We've talked about these things in the past. Computers are wonderful gadgets. They can do a lot of good. They give us a lot of information. The cell phone, a fantastic tool, but they can also be used for evil. And especially in the case of young people, they're gullible. They're playing around with different websites and they're going into different chat rooms. And there are a lot of, I'm going to use a technical term now, a lot of creeps out there that are trying to lure these young people into lives of moral turpitude. They're trying to use them for monetary reasons, use them for sexual pleasure, and they don't give a you-know-what about them as human beings. Folks, try to be aware of what your children are doing on their computer, on their iPhone, on their iPad, or whatever device they have. They do need supervision. Don't think it's just wonderful that they're playing around by themselves in their room and, they're out of your hair for a while. This could be devastating to them morally, emotionally, and as you heard John say, physically. This is despicable. Okay, now we have, these thousands of little boys being abused out there. We have 5 beds here in Florida. All right, you know what that is? Nada, zilch, zero, niente, nothing. You didn't realize how conversant I was in foreign languages, did you? All right, well, now you know. All right, now what do? They get to you. They get to your safe home for boys. And the lucky ones. So they come over there, and what do? I mean, where do you begin to heal them?
Yeah, well, the first thing we do is we want to make sure they're safe. We want to make sure they're not getting raped. We want to make sure they're not getting sold anymore. So our first priority is we want you to be safe. And then we also want you to feel safe. We want these boys to feel safe. So there's a difference between being safe and feeling safe. So we love these kids right where they're at. We love them unconditionally. Our staff we have 24-hour awake staff that are in the home, that are there for these kids, that are meeting their needs. We're trauma-informed care. And the beginning process is we just want them to be safe. So we just love them. And then as they adjust to our house, they get therapeutic services. They have case management, educational services. So we really want to start that healing process. We don't force them to relive their story. We don't force them to take on any kind of label they don't want to take on. Again, we just love them. And we believe that, that's what they need. They've been wanted and they've been used their whole life, but they've never really been loved. And so that's what our goal is to be there for them. Some of our kids stay with us for 3 days and they run away. Some of our kids have been with us for 3 years. So it just really depends on the need of the kid. And our staff do an amazing job with these kids.
As you can imagine, producing this wonderful program, Action for Life, it costs a great deal of money. We're going to need your help. So if you would like to donate to keep this good news program on the air, please go to your computer, your cell phone, actionforlife.net. Thought for the day. I hope that all of you belong to a Christian community. Going to church is extremely important. Why? Because we need the support of other people in order for us to live a good Christian life. Christianity is a community religion. Please worship in your church this weekend.
Where does our funding come from? About 80% of our funding comes from the state Department of Children and Families. And then the other is individuals, churches, businesses that support us. And we rely heavily on those individuals because we only get paid by the state if we have kids in the home. If we don't have kids in the home, then we don't get paid. But we have to continue to operate. And so we rely on those individual funds because sometimes we only have 3 kids in the house. But I still have to staff it like there's 5 because I don't know when kid 4 and 5 are going to show up. Groceries, we're talking 10 to 17-year-old boys who are growing boys who didn't always get to eat, 3 meals a day. So again, those individuals who support us on a monthly basis, and we're not talking people giving us thousands of dollars a month. We really rely on those individuals that are willing to give $10 a month.
Okay, so let me get this. You have a caseworker at the home? Caseworker?
Yes.
Do you have a caseworker that is able to give psychological help? They're going to need that. I mean, coming from where they came from, they need psychological help.
Sure. They see therapists while they're with us. We don't have therapists on staff, but they do participate in therapeutic services. We actually have mentors, survivors, who come into the home and meet with our kids twice a week. That's a huge part of our treatment as well, because these people speak the language, they know the kid's story, and the kids connect really well with them. So it's a really powerful tool.
And what about, the food? I mean, do you have a chef that cooks? Who does the cooking?
You're looking at them.
Oh, boy, you do it all, huh?
Our staff cook the meals with our kids. And really, we didn't want to create an institute. We didn't want to create a lockdown facility. These are survivors, not criminals. And so the home was built from the ground up for this purpose. So a brand new house sits on 10 acres in the middle of nowhere. Beautiful home. It doesn't look like a group home. It looks like something that we would live in. And so our staff cook the meals every day. Our kids work alongside our staff, so they learn how to cook, they learn how to budget, they learn how to go grocery shopping. Our staff do a great job of modeling and mentoring these kids. A lot of times, the kids cook meals on their own. Hey, can I cook tonight? Is something we always hear, and so we let the kids kind of be kids and be part of the family. They sit at the dinner table together. and they eat together. And so it really is a family environment. That's what we wanted. And so, our staff play video games with them. They play card games. They play board games. They have basketball outside. So we keep our kids busy because we know they got to stay busy or they find some trouble somehow. And it's great for our staff. And again,
so what about, sleeping arrangement? Do they all have their own separate room? How does this work out?
Yeah, every kid has their own room and their own bathroom. And that's done because, these kids come from a very traumatic background. And so we want them to have a safe space. So they've got their own bathroom. They've got their own bedroom. When the kids walk into our home, oftentimes they just, oh my goodness, when they walk in, they're excited to be there. And when they find out they get their own room and they have their own bathroom, these kids light up. They're finally safe. They finally got a space of their own.
What about, they come to you? What about parents? Are the parents in touch in any way? Or do we try to track down their parents, let them know where they are, what's happened? If they're coming from this country. Do you have some coming from different countries too that were brought over the border, illegally or whatever?
Well, right now we haven't had any individuals that were international that have come over illegally. All of our kids have been U.S. citizens, and if their parents. So that's a misconception also. Oftentimes we think that the kids that are being trafficked every kid comes from a broken home with a single mom that worked 6 jobs and didn't have time for their kids. We have kids that are rescued that have mom and dad present, kind of look like that, that American dream of, 2.5 kids in the picket fence. So we've got kids that come from, background with 2 parents. We have kids that come that are part or in the Department of Children and Families. So the state is their guardian. If the parents are still involved, oftentimes the parents didn't even really know what was going on. So we provide therapeutic services for the parent, for the family as well, so that if the kid is going to return home, both child and parents are prepared to receive the kid back. So we provide therapy for them as well. So sometimes back to the parent, sometimes they get adopted, and sometimes they age out of the system.
Okay, now, we're talking about the parents. When the child gets lured into this sex slavery or abducted, don't the parents report this to the police and say, my little boy is missing? How does this work?
You would think, right? And that's, again, one of the issues with boys. If your daughter goes missing and she's on the street, and she comes back and she doesn't look like she was living on the street, we ask questions. What did you have to do? How did you eat? Where did you sleep? Sometimes when a boy runs away, we don't ask those same questions. And so we've got to change that narrative to start asking boys these questions. And I'll circle back for 1 second to you were alluding to the kind of social media and how these kids are being groomed through social media. We've got about 5 billion social media accounts worldwide. About 6 million of those are kids under the age of 13. And so, like you were saying, I have a 13-year-old boy. I go through his phone if he likes it or not, just because I want to make sure he's being safe. Parents are oftentimes absent, like you were referring to, just keep them quiet, keep them in the room. But parents have to be active in their child's life. That's one way that you can help make sure your child's not abducted or that your child's not groomed, is be part of your child's life.
Okay, now these a couple of terms I want John to talk about. This term groomed. Please talk a little bit about groomed, what that means.
So we use that word. If a kid, so what a trafficker does, or what a buyer would do, is find the vulnerability in a kid's life. So that kid may lack structure at home or parental support. That kid may have issues making friends, or didn't make the football team or whatever. So what they do is they find the weakness, and then they meet that weakness. So the trafficker or the buyer would come in and say, I'm sorry that your mom doesn't love you. I love you just as you are, and slowly just builds that relationship and kind of wooing them into kind of a relationship. So it's a wooing process. It's a grooming process to get them ready to make them depend on the trafficker or make them depend on the buyer for their needs. And then that's when the switch happens and said, okay, I've done this for you. Now you're doing this for me.
Okay. Now, does your organization try to work with police, and the legal community, because I want folks to know, what can be done to sensitize people to the problem, and then as to what can be done legally, because these thugs, these lowlifes, these criminals, they have to be punished. They have to be put away for life. That's how strongly I feel about this. You folks know this. Please, John.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And part of what we do at the U.S. Institute Against Human Trafficking is we have training for law enforcement. It's because it's a growing crime. It's second only to drug sales. And so human trafficking is slowly going to take over drug sales, because when you sell drugs, it's dangerous to transport. Once you've sold a kilo or a pound of something, you've got to go get more of it. But when you're selling humans, that's something you can sell over and over and over again in a single day. Like I referred to that boy in St. Pete that was being sold 10 to 15 times in one day. That's normal in the world of trafficking. And so these gangs and these thugs, these people that are part of this criminal industry, are moving towards selling humans because it's a renewable source. It's harder to identify. If I'm driving down the street with a pound of something in the back seat and I get pulled over, law enforcement knows what to do. If I'm driving down the street with 3 people in my car that I'm trafficking, if law enforcement doesn't know the right questions to ask, then it's hard to identify. So we train law enforcement. We have training for medical professionals. We have training for parents. We really have to raise awareness, and all of that is free on our website to get trained, to become aware, and then get engaged.
Okay, John, we're running out of time, but what laws have to be passed to bring an end to this?
Well, we're currently working on ensuring that when somebody is arrested for paying for sex, that they go to jail, that they receive the highest amount of fine that they can receive. Right now in the state of Florida, they could be fined up to $5,000. Very, very rarely is anybody fined anywhere close to $5,000. It's a slap on the wrist. They are sent back in the community and they do it again. And so we need to raise awareness in the judicial system that these individuals need to go to jail and they need to be fined as much as they can be fined. And it's a crime that needs to be dealt with.
Well, you know what, John? You're being very lenient. I think that they should get the electric chair. That's how serious I think that this problem is. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard what John Long has had to say. I know you're as repulsed as I am to hear this. First of all, of course, we heard about the girls, but the little boys being sold 10, 15 times a day, 36,000 throughout the country. We only have 5 beds. Hey, folks, we got to do something about it. John's for action. I'm for action, and I hope you are too. We would like to thank our generous sponsors for their wonderful support. Thanks for watching. Please join us next time for Action for Life. I'm for action, and I hope you are too. I'm Father Michael Orsi. I am your host for Action for Life Television, that good news program which talks about the gospel of Jesus Christ, the big G, and the little g, all the good things that people are doing to put the gospel of life into action. So please join us for the next episode of Action for Life.